Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Podcast with your host, the Mindful Investor.
Welcome and thank you for tuning in to a new episode of the Commercial Real Estate Podcast with your host, the Mindful Investor. Today we have a great guest, Edna Keep. She has a fantastic story and a great energy. Edna was a financial advisor. In 2007, she left her practice where she was making $250,000 a year to invest in real estate. She took a course for $27,000 US and bought 50 doors within 18 months. With her, we're going to talk about education, mindset, and how each level has its own devils. We will talk about multifamily and forced appreciation. We will talk about creative financing and how to convince the seller to carry a second mortgage. She will tell us how she raises capital, something she's really good at. We will talk about the private REIT she and her partners are starting. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did. Okay, so welcome, Edna. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. It's nice to be on.
So I thought you could tell us about your story and so what were you doing before investing, how you started, what got you going, your first deal maybe, and then how you grew from there.
Sure. I used to be a financial advisor. I was a financial advisor for about 15 years. I sold mutual funds and life insurance, and certified financial planner. I had my designation as well. And then, it was 2007, we were introduced to real estate. And the reason we started looking at it is, I realized that all our income was tied up with mutual funds. My investments were all in there. If I didn't make sales, all my income, my investments, everything. So we thought we'd diversify a bit, maybe look at some real estate. I'd heard some things from some of my clients. I had some clients that were doing well in real estate. And so we attended a 3-hour event one evening in a hotel with one of Robert Kiyosaki's people. And next thing you know, we're in the next city over at a 3-day event. And that's when we really had our eyes open to real estate. So before we left that weekend, we signed up for a series of courses, which cost us like $27,000 US. And within 18 months, we had 50 doors, which was our goal. Like we thought, after sitting through the weekend and we're kind of taught, if you can get $50 or $100 a month cash flow, buy the house. So we started out that way thinking, we'll just buy 50 doors and we'll have $5,000 a month. That was kind of our goal. And when we hit it in 18 months, we were actually just shocked because it was like, that was our like 5, maybe even 10-year goal. But we partnered up with some other people, some fellow students, and we encouraged each other and supported each other. And our first bunch of purchases were condos and houses. And then our first big deal was a 24-unit apartment building. So that took us from 26 doors to 50 doors, like overnight. And that's when I was really hooked. I sold my financial planning practice, and I was making about $250,000 a year. It wasn't like I was making chump change. I'd been doing really well at doing it. But the passion wasn't there anymore. And you know what? Once I understood real estate, I couldn't even sell mutual funds anymore. It just didn't make any sense to me. So that's kind of how I got started in real estate. And then the growing thing, we kept buying more, and my favorite class of all with the Robert Kiyosaki group was creative financing, and that's where we learned about vendor financing, vendor takebacks, and just the whole creative aspect of financing, so that you could buy real estate without any of your own money. And I was just fascinated by that. I thought, oh, that's just amazing. And that's what we started to do. We were raising capital to buy our buildings, partnering with different people, and did really, really well. So now we're sitting at 522 doors, and almost 13 years. In June, it'll be 13 years that we were introduced to real estate. And we have 44 doors under contract. So we're still growing as well. A few years back, I had a lot of people that approached me and said, Edna, how'd you grow so fast? That was like back in 2014, 2013. And I realized then that I could help people because so many people didn't know how to put the deal together and raise capital and do all that stuff. So then now for the last few years, I've also been coaching and training people on buying real estate.
Wow, what a trajectory! It's quite impressive.
We surprised ourselves, believe me. I'd never had any intention of owning 500 doors. I can still remember one of my partners saying way back, "Oh yeah, I want to own 300 doors." And I thought, you're crazy. Why would you want to own 300 doors? You don't need to own 300 doors. I just thought that was way out there. I was going to be happy with my 50, but you know what? It just didn't work out that way. We ended up getting great deals and more investors wanted to invest with us. And yeah, so, and then just the other thing that we did just recently, just in January, actually, we started our own real estate investment trust, and we now have 300 doors under contract with that entity.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, in the U.S. So if everything goes well with that building, because we're also doing due diligence on another 300, we could potentially own more doors this year than I built um, in the last 13 years. So that's kind of exciting. That's what I'm kind of excited about right now.
Wow. So the $23,000 you spent on education, was it mainly with Robert Kiyosaki?
Yeah. We spent 27,000 US, and it was through the Tigrant Learning group. And yeah, you know what? It was the best money we ever spent. We were inducted into the Kiyosaki Hall of Fame within 18 months of starting for everything that we'd done, because they get you to like make an application to it. Our coach actually told us that we should apply for this. So we applied and we won. And when we were inducted into the Hall of Fame, we were the only Canadians on stage, and there was 5 of us. And we had actually were in first place out of everybody. So again, that was another shock because they hadn't told us ahead of time. They just told us that we were one of the, one's going to be on stage. And yeah, we learned so much. And we tried lots of different strategies. Like we did rent to own and well, we did everything. But then in the long run, we really like dealing with apartment buildings. So then that's what we focus on now.
So you mentioned you bought a 24-plex. Did you change your approach? Because I guess there were some single family houses before. Did you change your approach when you kind of graduated to multiplexes?
Well, it kind of came about organically too. I was meeting with a realtor and I was telling him that our goal was to own more houses. We'd bought a bunch of houses that year. And I said, we wanted to buy more. And he said, Edna, why didn't you buy an apartment building? I said, oh gosh, no, I'm not ready to buy an apartment building. I don't have enough houses yet. That was in my mind. I think I played Monopoly too much when I was a kid, but I really didn't think I was ready. And he said, well, what do you think it takes to be ready? And I said, I don't know, a whole lot more experience than we have and money and everything else. And he said, well, he says, you've raised capital on the houses. You definitely have the net worth. We had a decent net worth. And he said, one of your partners does property management, doesn't he? And I said, yeah, actually, yeah. So before I left his office that day, I wrote an offer on a 24-unit building. And he said, well, do you want to go by and see it? And I said, well, I think my understanding is you don't have to look at apartment buildings before you get them under contract. He said, right, but you go drive by. So I went and drove by it while he wrote up the offer. And then our partners, who were the property managers, they had been out of town at a course that weekend. And I phoned them up, or I texted them and I said, can you guys come over as soon as you get back? I've got something exciting. And so they came over and I said, so if we got an apartment building under contract, would you partner with us? And they said, yes. We were just at a conference and we made a goal that we wanted to get 24 doors in a year. And I go, there you go. 24 doors in one shot. So we were both really, really excited. So we got vendor financing. We had hard money lenders. We did everything on that deal. And then in the long run, we ended up condo converting that building into condos. That's kind of what was happening in our area at that time. And sold most of them out as condos. I think the partners still own some of them. We're not partners with them anymore, but I think they still own some of them.
And typically, so how do you structure them now? Is it
Well,
50-50 or?
typically what we do is we're the managing partner, so we don't put in any of our own money. The investors bring in the money, but then we manage the deal. So we find the deal, we analyze the deal, we finance the deal, and then we look after it and pay out the returns to the investors. So our investors are mostly silent investors, and we either manage the property ourselves, which we've now since decided we don't like that part. But our best way to do it is to have managing partners as well, because I'm really good at raising the capital and getting the deal all set up and all that. But I kind of lose interest after the whole startup is there, and I'm off to the next thing. So I need a managing partner who will look after the day-to-day operations and oversee it. So yeah, so basically, and then it's the same thing with our real estate investment trust. There's a managing partner. I help with acquisitions. I help with raising capital and marketing. And then we have another partner that kind of oversees. He's kind of the securities guy. He knows how to make sure that all our legal paperwork and everything is done. So that's one of the things that I like about this business is you don't have to be good at everything. And I think that that's really key in actually growing, is to partner with people who have different strengths than you do. Like I have really good strengths raising capital and talking to people and getting out there marketing and stuff like that. But I am not the detail person when it comes to analyzing properties. And also, and I mean, I analyze because I totally understand it, but it's not something I enjoy as much. I could care less if I ever walk through the building once I've owned it, you know what I mean? So yeah, but you learn that as you go. At the beginning, we did everything.
In terms of, so you say you excel at raising capital. What are your secrets? How do you go about it? What makes you good at it?
Well, part of it was I was a financial advisor for 15 years. So I was used to advising people what to do with their money. And I'm very comfortable talking about money. Not everybody is. And I learned very early on in real estate that it's not the money that makes the deal. It's the people creating the deal that make the deal. The money, most times people don't have the interest or the druthers to do what we do, so they're happy to invest their money with us and get a good return on it. A lot of people like to have shares in a physical asset as opposed to mutual funds, which is kind of like airy-fairy out there that nobody is really sure what they own. So that part is nice. People like that. And pretty consistent returns too. The market sometimes go through a dive. Like there was a time in the US when it did actually, when we very first started, there was a big tank in the US. Our market's kind of flat where we are right now, but we've just started purchasing in different markets. So, you just do that. You diversify, you get to learn as you go.
So some of the skills were transferable from your previous career.
Yeah. And, when I first, when people first started asking me, how we grew so fast, I actually at first thought, well, you know what? It's because I was a financial advisor. And then I realized I learned to be a financial advisor. So yeah, then that's how I ended up started to training people. Like I just did a mindset shift and I went, I can show these people how to do it and fast track it, quicker than we did learning on our own. And I transferred that knowledge as well.
You mentioned creative financing and using a lot of it on the 24plex. Can you tell us a little bit more about that transaction in particular and what type of creative financing you used?
Sure. I absolutely love this story. So we bought that property in 2008 at $75,000 a door. And at the time, the sellers I know thought $75,000 a door was really, really high. And they thought that they were actually scared because we tried talking to them about, increasing rents and stuff like that. But they'd owned the building for many, many years. So you know what? In our area, they probably paid $15,000 or $20,000 a door. So for $75,000 a door, they thought that they were doing really good at selling it at that price. But at that time, the average rent in that building was $425 a month. And the average rent in our city was $800 to $1,000 a month. So they were way under rented. And we found that out, by doing all our due diligence and stuff. So we knew that we could increase the rents and increase the value of the building. There was no doubt in our mind. The challenge was the banks didn't want to finance it for us at the value that we bought it at with the rents that we were getting for it. So we only were able to get 50% financing from a lender. So the bank gave us 50% financing. So we went back to the vendor and we said, okay, and we told them our story about what had happened, because we'd asked them initially for a vendor take back and they didn't want to give it to us. And because they were scared, they really didn't think we could get the kind of rents that we thought we could get, because they'd owned the building for a long time. It didn't feel possible for them. But anyway, we did talk them into giving us vendor financing, I think for about 20%, if I remember correctly, 25%. And then we raised capital for the other 25%. So that was our creative part. So again, we got in with none of our own money, and we paid the investor out within a year and a half, between a year and a half, I can't remember exactly, it was quite a while ago, by doing the condo conversion and then flipping out the condos and getting them paid back that way. And then by that time, we were able to qualify for regular financing as well.
Okay, and how did you convince the seller? Because it can be tricky sometimes.
It can be tricky. I actually have a real system for approaching vendors about financing, and we get so many of them, and my students get so many of them that it blows people away. The key is you don't do it ahead of time. Like lots of people, they think, well, I can only get this deal if I get vendor financing. So I'm going to ask them right now. So, you tell me you got a building for sale, and I say to you, well, do you want to finance some of it? And they just look at you and they go, oh, go away. You're just another broke investor, right? So they won't look at you. So a lot of people are dead in the water before they don't even get the building under contract at that point, because people look at them and they go, you don't have any money, you can't do it. So what you do is you make sure that the building is under contract first, that you're already working on financing, and that you've already spent money on your due diligence. So you've maybe spent money on an environmental, you've maybe spent money on a building condition report, and then in the meantime, you're working on financing. And then you come back with the financing, and you go, I only got this amount of financing. Would you consider vendor financing? So it's really the order that you do it. And then of course, there's special ways to ask too, because you want to build a bit of a relationship with them. They want to know that you know what you're doing. So it's a lot easier for us now as we're more established, but I can teach my students how to do it too. I've got students right now in Ontario that have 90% vendor financing.
Oh, wow.
On their building. And they're going to be able to, because the building was highly vacant, the couple who own the building are in a nursing home, and they just couldn't manage the property anymore. And so she did it in exactly the system I told her. She got under contract. She started spending money on due diligence, went to the regular financer, found out how much she could get on financing, which wasn't near enough. Then she went to the vendor and said, okay, this is where I am. And what they needed to do was renovate the units and increase the rents, because the average rent in there was about $800 too, and in that area it's between $1,400 and $1,600. So she knew she renovated it, she could increase the value of it. So she got a appraisal and an after repair value appraisal, and then she took that to the vendor and said, okay, so this is what I want to do, but I can't get financing right now. Would you hold financing for a year and a half, something like that? And she got 90% financing. So then she could use her own money to do the renovations. And then once it's done, she will, and she's moved most of the people out. And again, there's a special way you can do that. And got, as she's fixing the unit, she's getting new tenants in at the newer rent, so that when the time comes, she'll be able to get proper financing, and then she can pay out her vendor.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that for this deal, you use private money and private investors. How do you find them?
Well, you know what, again, you gotta, so for myself, when I very first started, I had my background as a financial advisor. So it was really just getting out and doing stuff. I did seminars, and I did wine and cheese, and I did lunch and learns, and just ways to get out and educate investors. And that's what I teach my students. You've got to educate your investors. So most people don't understand real estate. Look, I was a financial advisor for 15 years. I didn't understand real estate. Did not have a clue. When people used to come to me for advice and they would ask me about their potential real estate purchase, I'd say to them, why would you purchase something that gives you about a 3% return on your money? Because that's what real estate goes up with inflation. I didn't understand mortgage pay down. I didn't understand leverage with that. I did not understand it. So you can almost guarantee that 95% of the population out there don't understand real estate. So if you educate them on it, that's the key. You got to educate them so that they understand and learn through you, preferably through you, and then they'll become your investor.
You mentioned in the deal in Ontario about that deal that it's possible to get tenants out in a market where you can expect higher rents. So how do you go about that?
Sometimes you just ask. Just say, I got to renovate the building, so it's not going to be safe for you to be in here. And it was a mess. It was a mess. Like, they had all kinds of challenges. I think she even told me there was weeds growing through the windows, so it was health concerns for some people. Cash for keys. She said, hey, yeah, I'll help you move. I'll help you find a place, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's definitely, and she did major renovations too. So it wasn't just a lipstick job. It was major renovation she had to do to get that building up and running.
You mentioned a coach during your time, the time you were educated. How was this coach helpful to you? Were they helping you with accountability, designing your plan? How did you use them?
Pretty much everything. So part of the program when we paid the 27 is we got a coach that would come to our area and spend 3 days with us. We went to the courthouse looking for foreclosures. As I said, we did everything. We knocked on doors of drug houses that had been closed because they were growing drugs in them. We found people who were going into foreclosure and had meetings with them. Oh, it was so interesting, I tell you. The drug house, I still remember. Our coach was a lady too, and she was from our area. Her name was Shelley Hagan, super woman. I love her to pieces. And she was from our area, and which is in Regina. And so she understood, and she knew the market. She was in Calgary now, but she understood the market. And I still remember when we were driving around and she's going to take us to this drug house. I wouldn't even get out of the truck. Her and my husband went to the door. I went, I'm not doing that. I just went, I've never knocked doors in my life, and I'm certainly not going to start with knocking on the drug house door. But you know what? As it turned out, somebody already, I know, had an offer on there. Somebody was in there working on it, fixing it up. So we didn't buy it, but it was really interesting. So she came to town. She showed us all the ins and outs of it. And then, and at that time we were still waffling between whether we just wanted to be the investor or if we wanted to learn how to do it ourselves. We just weren't 100% sure. And then by the end of the weekend, we decided we wanted to do it ourselves. And so part of the coaching was, we had taken most of the classes, so we understood, but it was the hand holding through the deals. Can you look at this offer? Does it look right? Is there anything else I need to put on it? Where should we go for financing? The lender's asking us this question. Is that normal? All these questions and things and fears that come up, they held our hand through that. And that's what I think the importance of a coach is. I mean, especially with multifamily, that it's a big deal. And you're buying buildings, $2, $3, $4 million. And you don't want to be making a mistake. You want somebody who's been there, done that, and can show you how to do it. So yeah, it was a really big deal. And you know what? We still stay in touch with her. I now hold a 3-day event in my city every year for my students and for other fellow investors. And she has spoken at this year would have been our 6th, but we had to cancel it because of the COVID virus. But she has spoken of 4, and she was going to speak at this one again. There was it 3. Anyway, she missed 1 or 2 years just because I was late getting hold of her, and she already had other plans. But to this day, she comes and helps me out and supports me, and I just love that about her. The one thing that I've learned, and the one thing that I spend a lot of time on with my students, is mindset. And I realize that people really have to make a mindset shift to move into multifamily and to move into using other people's money to buy their properties, because it's not for the average Joe. You gotta be willing to step up, take the risk, take the responsibility, and everything else. And most of that stuff happens between here before it ever happens on paper.
Yeah, it was the same thing in my case. It really took a mindset shift, and I educated myself, but needed some time where I would focus on the next steps and changing the mindset from being an employee to being an entrepreneur, and working on my own and making my own decisions, and making income based on what I would achieve.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, we can insist enough on the importance of mindset. And so for the 24plex, your exit strategy was a conversion, a condo conversion. Can you walk us through the process? Because not many people know about this real estate maneuver.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm going to preface it by saying we wish we hadn't did that. We wish we would have just held it, because those doors right now be valued over 100 a door. But it was kind of the trend. It was a thing they're doing right then. And really, we paid $75,000 a door, and we sold some of them at $145,000 a door. So we made good money on them. But how it works is at the time in our area, we were a real shortage of housing. Our area was going through a huge boom, and people needed housing. So we kind of converted them. And the process is that you have to apply with the city, and then you have to go through zoning, because they have to write up a whole condo plan and a condo, write up on a little plan, all the square footage and all that kind of stuff. You had to have a parking space for every unit and all this kind of stuff. My partners looked after most of that, because like I said, those kind of details are not my specialty. But they had many meetings with the city. My husband and the other fellow would go to those meetings, and they were making applications to the city to be able to get this building converted. And we were like one of the last ones that were even allowed to do it, because there were so many happening in our city at that time that they started to get worried that there wouldn't be enough rentals. So after ours was converted, and maybe one more, I can't remember exactly, then it was shut down. And at this point in the city that we live in, it's still not allowed, because it's still right now they're building a whole bunch of brand new condos and stuff. So it's not the same, but they also won't allow, they don't need apartment buildings to be converted into condos anymore.
Yeah, and when you do a refinancing, is it the idea that you pay out the investors and then you keep the building in your name?
And they stay on title too. Like they're still part of the deal even after they're paid out. That was kind of how we always sold it. Was we'll pay your principal back as quickly as possible, and then once your principal is paid back, then we share in the cash flow. So it was generally 40% to the investors and 60% to us. 30% to us for putting the deal together and bringing the investors, and 30% for our managing partners.
And usually people who invest, get their money back, are good recurring customers. Is it your experience too?
That's exactly our experience. Yeah. Yeah. And that was another reason we were able to grow, is because we were able to do a few of those fairly quick turnarounds. And then, then people just reinvested with us again.
Nice. Let's dive a little bit more into the REIT, because that's the next level of sophistication. So it's a real estate investment trust. Is it a Canadian entity or an American entity?
It is a Canadian entity, but we're going to be investing in the States. Like our first purchase, and right now I think we're around $2 million raised. We need another $1 million to close on this because we've got $7 million worth of buildings under contract right now, or not under contract. Half of them under contract, and the other we're very close to getting them under contract. But we're going to be buying in the U.S. Got some really, really good prices, and it's workforce housing, so it's all in areas where the rents are they're maybe around 500, but we can probably move them up as high as 7. We just need to do some renovations on some of the properties. Some of them are mismanaged, stuff like that. So we got to get in and do some work ahead of time. But yeah, we're really excited about just specific markets in the States. So the first one that we're buying is in Memphis, Tennessee.
Nice. And do you focus on Tennessee, or are you also in other states?
We're looking at a few different areas. We just happened to start in Memphis. We're looking in North Carolina and Kansas and different areas like that as well.
How do you pick those areas? Are there specific criteria you go after?
Yeah. So my partner, one of the partners, he was doing purchases. He was being an acquisitions manager for another REIT. And the other, of course, with REITs, there's always specifics. You can only buy so many in each area. You've got to be careful. Like there's criteria of your REIT, and the group that he'd been working for couldn't buy any more there. And he said to him, "Well, I'm still finding lots of great bargains." So that's what made him decide that, and he approached us about starting this REIT because he was finding all these other properties. So he was doing buying for this group all across Canada and the US when he came across this market. So he's been in the industry now, I think, for 20 years and has bought properties all over Canada and US. And he just watches, he knows the markets. And the reason he wants to focus on or workforce housing is because that's where the whole value add is right now. We can get them for a certain price, put a certain amount in for repairs and maintenance, increase the value of the property, and then refinance it. But lower income working people, like people that work for FedEx and Amazon and different stuff like that. That's a popular area because it's the temperature, so it's very temperate year round. So great airports coming in and out, stuff like that. So yeah, it really caters lots of workforce there, lots.
You take care of the capital raising side of things?
Yeah. Yeah, and acquisitions. I help with the acquisitions too, like just analyzing, putting the financing together and all that kind of stuff as well.
Doing the underwriting. So, and how do you go about raising capital? Do you do wine and cheese, or do you educate?
Well, you know what? Nowadays, I do most of mine just through email and presentations like this. Like just for an example, the other day, because we just got this 300 under contract, and we're working on another roughly 300. And I just sent it out to my email list, and I must have got 8 responses back in the same day. The other thing that we were planning on doing, it's on hold now, but we were going to take some investors up to Memphis in May, at the end of May, and also some of my students too, because some of my students, they just want to learn about maybe buying a 12 unit or an 8 unit or, a smaller package. They're not ready to get into the big stuff yet. So I told my partner, if you're running across small deals, let's share them with my students. So we're going to take a group of my students and investors down and do like a roadshow with them.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. And what type of buildings do you go after in this REIT?
Well, the one we have under contract right now is 300 units in one package, and they are run down. Some are highly vacant, just because the last people just didn't manage it properly. So there's lots of work for us to get in there and get done before the values increase to where it should be.
So there is a lot of meat on the bone, like this.
Yes, you betcha. You betcha.
And you come with capital so that you can. And how much capital do you usually factor in would be needed for renovations?
We're planning on 10,000 a door, or that's what we're budgeting for. We think we can do it for less than that, but you never know. Sometimes, especially in markets like this with COVID, like you just don't know what's going to happen. So we always budget a little bit high, but we think maximum 10,000 a door to get those places fixed up on average.
Okay.
But we're only paying like less than 12,000 a door, so you can see where the numbers work, right?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned mentorships and your students. Can you walk us through a typical mentorship program? How do you help your students?
Sure. So I have a program called 90 Days to 5K. And the premise behind that is in 90 days, I can teach you exactly what it's going to take for you to be making $5,000 a month in passive income through apartment buildings, purchased with investor capital and lenders, of course. And how my program is set up is 12 modules, and each module is designed to build on the next one. So there's a learning portion. So there's a membership section. There's a video where I train them on step one, I call it. And then there's a homework assignment, and they've got to send that homework assignment direct into me so that I can make sure that they're on track. And then we build on it. So there's 12 of those modules. Each one's designed to learn and then do, learn and then do, because I think that that's the best way to lock in the learning. Each week, we also meet on a live Zoom call like this with the group of students. We'll analyze buildings together. We'll talk about different areas. We'll talk about, how to structure a deal, how to structure a joint venture agreement, what they need to do when they go to the lawyers, that they need to get an environmental for their property, all this kind of stuff. So do a walkthrough with people, because there's always people in the group that are buying. For example, last night, I do my calls on Tuesday night. There were 3 students that had just closed buildings in the last couple months. So the new students that come on were getting an education from the students that had just fought on some of the things that they went through to be able to close the building, especially because there was 2 of them that were closing on April 1st. So it was all the COVID. So like, how'd you get the paper signed, and how'd you do this, and how'd you do that, and how'd you get, in to meet your tenants and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, they got a real eye opener that these students who'd started with me like 6, 8, and one of them was over a year ago with me, are buying their buildings. They're 12, 8, 16 unit buildings. And then I do a couple one-on-one coaching calls with them as well, because not everybody wants to talk about everything in a group call. So there's a couple one-on-one there. And then, you know what, if a student's working on a live deal, I give them unlimited access to me, because sometimes they can't wait till Tuesday night to ask me a question. So they text me or email me or phone me, and with whatever they're working on. Not too long ago, I actually met with a student who came in from Ontario. He was buying a property in Alberta, which is the next province over from us. So he flew there from Ontario, and I flew out and I met him. Now, and I generally don't do that. I don't go out and look at the buildings, but I did with this one because it was a really good deal. And if he didn't buy it, I was going to buy it. So I wanted to look at it myself too. So it was kind of a due diligence trip for myself, just in case he didn't take it, but he did decide to take it, and he raised all the capital for it. So he was able to do it on his own. Cause I would have even potentially partnered with him if he needed me to, but he didn't. He did it all on his own. And now he's a proud owner of a 9-unit building in Whitecourt, Alberta.
Fantastic. So you insist a lot on action taking.
And I hold their hand through the action taking. And the other thing that I'm really good at, and I think this is one of the things where I excel compared to some other people out there, is I train a lot on mindset too. Like, because that to me is 90% of your success. If you can't get it up here, you can't do it. So you can get it up there, and I'll hold your hand like through the whole thing. And I've had so many of my students say, when the mindset shifted, I knew I was going to own a building. And before that, it's kind of pie in the sky. And I always tell people, you can do it. Lots of people do it, but you have to make that mindset shift, and you have to understand it. And when just for an example, today I was going through module 3 of one of my students. And she said to me, yeah, I'm not even comfortable talking to people about raising capital yet. It's just, I just am so scared to, and I'm scared that I might lose their money and all that kind of stuff. And I said, you know what? That's very normal. And I don't expect you to know in module 3 enough to go buy a building. But I said, by the time you're done, you are going to know that you're the one that holds the gold in your hand, and you're not going begging people for money. You're giving people an opportunity to invest with you. And that's the mindset shift people have to get. You're not running around, could you please give me money? Please give me money. It's like, hey, I'm the man or I'm the woman. I got the gold. Do you want to be part of it? I know it's a good deal. Do you want to be part of it? And then that's part of the mindset shift that has to happen.
What type of returns do you offer your investors? Do you give them numbers when you talk to them on your raise
We
capital?
will give numbers. We tend to project low, like we'll go 9 to 15% return. But and this is something that people can't always wrap their head around when they first start. But one return on your investment is mortgage pay down. And the reason it's a return on your investment is your mortgage is getting paid down by your tenants. And in most cases, the mortgage pay down alone is between 6 and 7%. So a little bit of inflation, and of course you want to buy a building, or at least make it a deal in the long run that cash flows for you. You've got cash flow, you've got mortgage pay down, you've got inflationary increases, and then the big one is forced appreciation, which is where you can go in and fix your property up and increase rents and stuff like that. And all that adds up to returns. Sometimes those returns are 40% in a year. Sometimes, and this is the really big key, depending on how much money you put in, because if you get vendor financing, that's not considered part of the money that you need to put in. So the less money that you have to raise and put in, the higher the return on your investment. So sometimes we're looking at 40% cash on cash return, depending on how, like I said, how little investment capital you actually need.
Yeah, and like Robert Kiyosaki says, if you put zero down, it's infinite returns.
Exactly. Yeah. And so for us, it's always infinite return. But for our investors, we show them what the return is based on their money going in. But we've done $4 million deals with 200,000, 300,000 investor capital. The rest is vendor take back. We get CMHC financing. We get really favorable financing. Most of our cases, and all three of the students that closed on their buildings here just recently, every one of them got CMHC financing, which is 85% of loan to value. And one of them actually even more than that. It was 90% loan to value and full vendor take back. So again, I think $60,000 of their own money into a $1 million deal.
Wow. And just for those who don't know, the CMHC stands for Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation.
Yeah, insurance, yeah.
Yeah. And it allows for larger loan to values up to 85%.
Yes, and long-term amortizations as well, like 35-year amortizations as well, which is really key in keeping your payments down.
You mentioned qualifying for a mortgage. Can you briefly tell us about how you qualify for a mortgage on a commercial property versus residential?
Sure. So there's something that they look at you differently. So first of all, apartment buildings are financed like a business. So they want to know what the net operating income is. And that's what they're financing it on, based on if you can afford to pay the mortgage and have cash flow and all that kind of stuff. So they finance it like a business. So first and foremost, they look at your building. Then they want to know that you're going to have the net worth, that you have something to lose. So they will, for example, if you're looking at buying $1 million building and you need $250,000 down as a down payment, they're going to want to know that you have that much as a net worth, and maybe not just you, but you and your investors. Does that make sense? So if you're buying a $4 million building, they're going to want to know that you can have a net worth of at least 25% of that. And as long as you do, you can keep buying.
Thank you. We talked about coaching. We talked about education. Do you have an accountability system for yourself now to stay motivated?
You know what? I have had my own coach since 1999, and I still have one. I'm a big believer in having a coach, because a lot of times your coach will see the future you, and you're still seeing the present you because you live with yourself every day, right? So they see things in you that you can expand on. And so I love having a coach in my corner. And right now, my coach is 100% mindset coach. He owns real estate as well, so he totally understands the ins and outs of the real estate, but he's a full mindset coach. But I've had every kind of coach under the earth. I even have a personal trainer. Like, I'm a big believer in having a coach. And most of the coaches, when I hire them, I don't need a cheerleader. Like, I'm already fairly motivated. I don't need a cheerleader. Oh, you're doing great, you can do this. I don't need that. I want a coach who can teach me something, who can teach me to be better, do better, and expand in whatever way that happens to be. So yeah, since 1999, I've had a coach, and I might go, a little bit of time here and there that I don't. But very quickly I get another one, because that valuable for me. I've spent tons of money on coaches, sometimes $50,000 in a year. And you know what? I don't regret any of them.
Thank you. And this coach right now, what are you working on regarding your mindset these days?
Well, I have a goal, and my major goal is actually to be earning $100,000 a month net outside of real estate as a mindset coach. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I'm learning, because I've believed and been teaching my students since 2014 how important mindset is. But you know what? Every time you want to go to a new level, you have a new devil. New level, new devil. Every time you want to grow, you come up with new mindset challenges. Every single time, whether you go from 50,000 a year to 75,000 a year, 75,000 to 100,000 a year, 100,000 a year to 250,000 a year, 250 to, every single time there's new mindset issues that come up. And that's what I work on with my coach, because I just want to keep growing as a person and doing better and doing more and helping more people too. And I think that's a great area to teach people on as well.
I'm really enjoying this conversation about mindset.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's so key. It's so key. I figured that out years ago. But you know what? I still need help with it, because sometimes you just get stuck. And your coach, your mindset coach, can help you get unstuck.
So Edna, if you were to start over and knowing what you know today, what would you do differently?
You know what? I would do the same thing, but I would just do it all faster, because it's just available. You know what I mean? It's not as scary as you think it's going to be. When our first property, we were scared of everything, like tenants and toilets and roofs and furnaces, just everything that we could think of, we were scared of. But we did a lot of things right too. Like, we did our education, we got coaching, we relied on other people. The biggest thing that I see that holds people back from growth is trying to do it on their own. Trying to manage their own buildings, do their own maintenance. Like, you don't know how many times I went to a conference, met and we meet really great people at this kind of stuff. Go back and meet them 4 or 5 years later, and we had, like, by this time, like 100 doors, and they had like 4. And I go, like, what happened to you? Like, you were smart, way smarter than we were. Like, what happened? Oh, we decided we're going to save money and do our own property management. Well, you get stuck in that day-to-day crap, you can't grow. You have to be working on your mindset all the time to be able to grow. And so wisely, we've spent our money on coaching all the time to move forward, move forward, move forward, move forward, and still are.
What was your biggest mistake and the best lesson you've ever learned?
Biggest mistake. So the best lesson we ever learned was partnering with people who knew more than we did. And still I do that to this day. Like, partners with the 2 guys I am with my REIT, they know way more than I do. I have my skill set, but they're way smarter than I am. So partnering with people who know more than you do. When I very first started, our partner had taken the exact same training we did 2 years prior. And when we met them, they owned 20 doors. So when we met them, and we met them because our coach put a dinner together and we got to meet them, I just had this overwhelming craving to be around them. And the reason is I wanted to be like them. I didn't want to have 1 door, 2 doors, or be that person who didn't get any doors. I wanted to be like them. So I always find somebody who I want to be like, and then I follow what they do. So that would be something that I would tell people is key. Biggest mistake, I think, that first partnership that we had was so valuable for learning. But our mistake, we were so focused and so busy growing that we did not take the time to write up our partnership agreement. And we ended up so that we're not even friends. And I still regret that to this day. It's heartbreaking. It felt like a divorce to me at the time, because they were good friends, but it just was a whole bunch of misunderstandings that could have been solved by having the proper partnership agreement in place.
And the last question would be, so you have students now, and which are your favorite students? Who do you enjoy the most teaching?
You know what? The ones that take action, because I am just thrilled. I'm as thrilled when they buy a building I'm more thrilled when they buy a building now than when I do, because to us it's kind of old hat already. We've done so many. But action takers, like people who show up and do the work and realize that they need some help and aren't scared to ask for it. I love working with those students, and you just gain a really loving relationship with these people. Like, they get to be your friends. You're meeting every day on a call for like a year, sometimes 4 or 5 months. You're walking them through purchasing their building, helping them out with all the ins and outs. And I'm just bragging on them all the time, and it feels like they're my kids. So that part I absolutely love.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Edna, for this very engaging conversation. It was really a pleasure to talk to you tonight.
You're most welcome. My pleasure as well. I love giving back. I love being able to help people as much as possible. And if people want to find me, I do free coaching Friday, every Friday on Facebook, Facebook Lives, just under Coach Edna Keep, if they want to connect with me there. And I also do a Mindset Monday every Monday. They're both short, maybe 10 minutes. I have my own podcast called 7-Figure Real Estate, where they can follow me more. And then, of course, if it's something that if they think they want to get into multifamily and might want to have a coach, well, they can reach out to me at edna@ednakeep.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Edna.
You're most welcome. Thanks for having me.
This has been the Commercial Real Estate Podcast with your host, the Mindful Investor. Thank you for tuning in, and for more information, visit themindfulinvestor.net.